Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Erin Creighton, and I am the Adult Services Department Head and Assistant Branch Manager for the Fredericksburg branch of the Central Rappahannock Regional Library. My title is so long. I'm so sorry, Lamont. You always have to listen to that. Today is Wealth Wednesdays, and I am thrilled to be joined by Lamont Brown, who is the owner and wealth manager of Alna Wealth Management here in Fredericksburg. And he is here today to talk to us about financial safety nets. So take it away, Lamont.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you. Remember a time when things didn't quite go as planned? Maybe it was an unexpected loss of a loved one or an unexpected health challenge. Or if it was like me, it was a job loss. Back in 2010, after taking my prime job and changing careers, I was unemployed. I had a mortgage, 2 kids, and a wife, and now I didn't know how I was going to make ends meet. Times like these happen in all of our lives, and it's at times like these we realize that we need to be prepared financially to be able to handle these bumps in the road. Next slide. So I want to start today with an important question to everyone in the audience. If something happened to you today, would you be ready financially? I'm pausing. I want you to think through that. Today, I'm going to cover all of the financial risks that we have as we walk through this thing called life. I'm going to then go into the different statistics that kind of drive each one of these things and how we should think about them as we plan. And then I'm going to give you the tools that will help you to avoid, reduce, or just completely take them off the table. So without further delay, let's talk about what risks do we all face as we walk through these days. Next, the first thing we want to understand is there are 3 financial risks that we all face. It's death, disability, and loss of income. Today, I'm going to say that D word, death, quite a bit, but I want you to really take it in and think about it as you look at your family situation and the impacts that may happen on an unexpected loss of you or a loved one. Death is one of the first things we want to prepare for. Next, there's disability or incapacity. This is the risk that we face that at some point we won't be able to do our job and we may experience a downturn in our income due to that. And then finally, there's a loss of income. Just like me, I had a loss of income and I had to scramble to figure out how I was going to make ends meet and how these things were all going to come together. Next, the key you need to understand when you think about risk is you really can't eliminate all the risk. You can't walk around with a bubble around your body and say, I'm not taking any risk, but you can be prepared. You can be prepared with the tools that I'm going to talk about today. Next, the first thing we want to talk about is unexpected death. There's a 32% likelihood that at any point someone will pass away. 32% chance that at any point throughout the day, through whatever happens, that you may not end up here. Next, the key that you need to understand is that after an unexpected death, most families experience a 51% likelihood of them being or having a financial struggle. That's over half of us. If there's an unexpected death in our family, we're going to experience some kind of financial trauma or financial hardship because of an unexpected death. So you want to be thinking about this as you put these things together. You want to think in my mind, if something happened to me today, what would that impact be? And will my family be prepared for that? Next, the next risk we talked about earlier, which was death, disability, and loss of income. Disability is impactful. And it's happens more often than people care to think about. First off, it happens 13 and a half times, 13.5% times over the course of someone's lifestyle, over the course of someone's life. There's a 13.5% times that you're going to be disabled or unable to show up to your job and do the job that you've been trained to do. This is impactful because if you can't work, what happens? Income stops, you have to go on disability, and all of those things. Next, there's a 40% impact on your income. What this means to you is not only are you going to be potentially losing income, but you're also going to be incurring more expenses as you're disabled. So if something were to happen to me and I can't work, what happens to my household, and where am I going to get that extra 40% as I start to figure out what my next step in life is going to be? So the second risk we want to be prepared for is disability, after we think about death. Next, then, like me, this is the loss of income. This one is impactful. And the key that I learned in my research is I looked out on the web to figure out what was the impact of this. There's actually a 70% likelihood that at any point throughout your whole working life that you will be unemployed. So it's not, whether or not it's going to happen. It's just, when is it going to happen? 70% likelihood that you're going to experience a loss of income or a loss of a job throughout your work life. So these are things that we as responsible adults need to be preparing for as we look forward and look at our financial situation. We want to look at what's the impact of unexpected death. What would happen if I became disabled? How would I make ends meet? And most importantly, if I were to lose my job today, where is the income going to come from? Once we start to think about those things and put them into perspective, then we can start putting tools in place to actually reduce those risks and take care of those risks. Next slide. So we talked about unexpected death earlier. This is an unexpected passing or something happening that causes either you or your loved ones to no longer be with us. Next, there are key things you want to consider. Next, first, life insurance. Everyone knows life insurance, but we get it all kind of discombobulated and we think about it the wrong way, I believe. First and foremost, there are two types of life insurance. There's your term and your perm. Term, we all know that. That's the inexpensive life insurance that has a start date and an end date. This life insurance is best for people who are trying to secure a specific cure for a specific type of risk and cover it over a specific time period. An example would be when my kids were pre-college age and I wanted to make sure they went to college if I died before they started college. I had extra life insurance to make sure that if something happened to me, they would have the $150,000 to $200,000 set aside so that they could go to college. Now that my kids are grown and gone, I want to have insurance so that if something happens to me, I can pass on a legacy. So that type of insurance may be different. But there's that type of insurance could be what we call permanent policy. This is life insurance that we want to maintain for the rest of our lives. The keys here is don't look at the cost, look at the coverage, look at what period of time it's going to cover. I know everyone talks about, reduce your insurance cost by going with a term policy and not going with a permanent policy. The keys that you want to think about as you consider this is a permanent policy is for life. And if you start this at age 25 and by 46, you have existing medical conditions, you may not be able to go out and get more insurance. So you want to weigh those odds as you start to put together your life insurance. But life insurance is really there to cover the unexpected death that could happen in your lifetime and to make sure that your goals and your legacy continue. Next. Now, we're going to talk about estate planning. We've talked about it in several different ones of these sessions. The keys here is this is not going to prevent or protect you, but it's going to ensure that your wishes are carried out and that your loved ones are protected from unexpected death. So we set up our beneficiaries. This is on 401ks, IRAs, life insurance policies, and all of those types of things. You can also add in beneficiaries to checking accounts, savings accounts, and all those with payable on death, transfer on death, and all of those tools. But you want to make sure that you're mindful of what happens if. What happens if? Who gets this? And will they know what to do with this? Then we want to consider our will. Our will is a tool that if something happens to me after I die, that everything's going to be given to the people that I want it to be given to and the manner I want it to be given to them. And then finally, there's a trust, which is there to do similar things, but it's really there to protect you and your family against an unexpected death. If it happens, there's a plan in place that ensures that things go the way you would have wanted them to go. So we've covered unexpected death. Next, let's get into disability. This is one that is often misunderstood. It gets merged together. I like to break it up in two different ways. Disability is the likelihood that you can't do your job. Incapacity is similar to that, but it's the likelihood that you can't make financial decisions or take care of yourself. And this generally is something that we think about much later after you're no longer working. So disability, likelihood that you cannot do your chosen profession. Next. So as we think about that, there's really three ways we can address this disability. First, next, there's group disability. Group disability is the disability that you gained through your employer. And it's like that. Your employer is the group and they provide this insurance and potentially subsidize this insurance to make sure that you as an employee will receive that. Now, these insurance are broken up into two main components. It's either long-term or short-term. Short-term will cover you for a period of normally 90 days, 60 to 90 days, just depending on your employer, how they set that up. This is one of the often overlooked disabilities because as we are signing up for our health care and all that stuff, when we show up to the job, it's that one little checkbox say, do you want long-term or short-term disability? I know when I was not in the know, I used to just randomly go through it and just not even pay attention to it. But this is really going to protect your income in the event that you cannot work. Now, the keys here is if your employer subsidizes or pays for parts of this disability, when you receive these benefits, they could be taxable. Not all of it, but they could be taxable. So you want to be aware of that. If they're only going to cover up to 70% of your total need, then you know that's 70%, and then the tax man is coming. So you want to be aware that if this happens, will I be able to live on 70% minus the tax impact, right? So that's the first part, group disability. Next. Personal disability is a policy that you purchase on your own through an insurance professional that is going to cover that gap between your group disability and your need. These are policies that are bought and sold out on the open market, and this is a great tool to consider if you are earning money and you want to make sure that if something happens to you, that earning is not disrupted. key thing here, if you're paying for this on your own, this could be completely tax-free income once you become disabled. The key here is you want to think about it from two perspectives. Personal disability, you're looking at it, does it cover me if I can't do my job or if I can't work at all? There are differences in those policies, and you want to ask that question. Does this cover me if I'm a financial advisor like myself and I have a traumatic brain injury? I may be able to work, but I may not be able to do my job. So I want to ask that question as I'm selecting a personal disability. Will this cover me in the event that I cannot do my chosen profession, or will this just cover me if I can't work at all? And the cost is different, but you also want to make sure that you're covering yourself at the highest rate you can. Because if you can't do your chosen profession, you might have to take a lesser income in another type of job. So next, when we talked about incapacity and the latter half, long-term care and long-term care insurance is another type of insurance, which is there to cover the cost of nursing and nursing home care, or someone coming into your house. This happens when you cannot complete two of the activities of daily living. And this is really there to make sure that you're not having to shoulder the burden of all of the expenses that are going to come during this period. And like I said earlier, risk can't be eliminated. It can be mitigated. It can be passed on to someone else, like we pass it all off to an insurance company, or it can be completely just ignored, right? So you want to be thinking about group disability, personal disability, or long-term care as you start to prepare your whole risk profile, and you want to be looking at each one of them. Now, you can't put a bubble around your whole financial life and say, I'm going to not risk anything. And you want to be aware of what your risks are and which ones will be the most impactful, and then go after them with these types of tools. Next, like I experienced back in 2010, a job loss is impactful. Not only was I stressed about, how is I going to make ends meet, but I also had all these extra bills and things that were coming in. So I had to get out there and do what I needed to do to find another job. Next, loss of income is probably one of the hardest things for people to deal with, because not only are you no longer working, but it takes you out of your social circle. You lose all the connections with the people that you work with and all of those things. And now you have to figure it out. Next, the key to covering a loss of income is the emergency fund. I know a lot of people say, I don't want to have this money sitting on the sidelines waiting for the potentiality that I may lose my job, but this happens more than I care to remember. And in my practice, I work with people on a daily basis. And one of the common themes is, I don't want to have all this money sitting in a savings account, Lamont, waiting for the potential that I may lose my job. I want to keep it, working for me. And I'm going to tell you this. Having an emergency fund is the difference between sleeping at night and not sleeping at night when you have when you have a job downturn. The last thing you want to do is have a job downturn at the same time the market is going down, and have to go in and tap those funds. So my recommendation up front and unequivocally is that you need to put this emergency fund in a place that is going to be there when the time comes. That's not fluctuating with the market. That's ensuring that if you need to break the glass and go at this, that you're there to do that. It's there to do that. Next, this should be 3 to 6 months of your expenses, 3 to 6 months of what you spend on a monthly basis. So the first things you want to look at is going to be without your liabilities, no mortgage, no credit cards, because those things become kind of optional if the glass has to be broken. So you want to be thinking about gas, water, electric, and then you throw in a mortgage or housing, and then you throw in car and all those other things. You really want to get a good firm idea of what that number is and make sure you put it in a place that if stuff happens that it is there and you can go out and use it. One of the hardest things to see is when someone has a fully funded retirement plan or is completely funded their 401k, but then they have a job loss. Now, if you're below the age of 59 and a half and you have this job loss, you're going to pay taxes and penalties on that pre-tax money in order to just make ends meet. And it could have been all different if you just put all the money, put a little bit of extra every month into an emergency fund and fully funded the emergency fund to ensure that when times like these happen, you were prepared. Like I said earlier, there's a 70% likelihood that at some point in your working life, you're going to experience a job loss. So this emergency fund is important and impactful. And I don't care how many times I said, you need to hear it again. Emergency fund, emergency fund, emergency fund. Next. Then there's income diversification. There's a lot of talk about this out on the internet, and people have talked about having rental properties, doing other things. You want to look at your income and think, if I lost this one job, what would the impact be? And how can I reduce that risk? There's other ways out there to build income into your situation. That could be a side job, that could be other things, but you want to be thinking of, if something happens, I don't want all my eggs in this one basket. That doesn't mean go out and have all these other things going on, but that does mean you need to be aware that if one job happens to end, that you do have some other income coming in. Next. So having multiple streams and multiple sources of income is important. I didn't realize that, and I lost one job and I was down to zero. So a house of two incomes was one income at one point. So that was impactful. So you want to start thinking about, how can I add extra income into my overall situation? And then finally, next is bucketing. Now, if you're in retirement, we've talked about a lot of things when it comes to emergency fund. If you're in retirement and you're relying on your investments to feed your machine and pay to pay your bills, you want to be looking at that, what we call the sequence of returns of risk. And that is the risk that you retire and the market goes down, and now you're taking out money when the market is down. That's going to reduce your income over time, and it's going to impact your overall longevity of your portfolio. So you want to stage investments based on the time that you may need them. So that first 1 to 5 years, you want to make sure that is sitting in a place or in an investment that won't go away. Then you want to start to think about that 5 to 10 year mark. And then you want to start thinking about that 10 plus. You want to put it and stage your income so that it is protected and it's there. So loss of income is important and impactful, because once we lose our income, there's a lot of things that have to happen in order for us to be to get back to where we're going. So up to this point, we've talked about the stats. We went through each one of the risk and covered the tools. So what happens if there's no safety net? Next, we all know what happens. Our lifestyles change, bills go unpaid. Like I said earlier, 51% of people who experience unexpected death are impacted financially, and life becomes easy. That piggy bank is, we're losing money. Next, if we do put the safety nets in place, next, our lifestyle is protected. We're able to continue and focus on the most important part. That's our family, making sure bills are paid, and our legacy and our loved ones are completely are secured. So when we think about all these things, we want to look at it from this perspective. If we don't have these things in place, what is the impact going to be? And if we do have these things in place, what is the impact going to be? Next, The difference is really straightforward. It's preparation. We all know that at some point, one of these risks is going to cross our door, and we need to be prepared for that. And I've given you tools today to go through your personal situation and make sure that you're prepared for that. Next, because your financial success is really dependent on you avoiding mistakes by being prepared. So I want you to take a moment here, pull out a pen, and I want you to think back to a time when you had one of those unexpected things happen where things didn't turn out right. And I want you to go one step further. I want you to think about, of the tools I talked about today, which one of those tools would have made the ride smoother? It couldn't have eliminated it, but made the ride a little bit smoother. I want you to write that down. I'm waiting. Write it down. Now, if you'd like, you can add it to the chat. Which tool would have helped you? And I want to just take a poll to see what everyone is seeing and which tool would have really made the difference.
So while we wait to see if we get questions, I figured I would rejoin you, or if we get answers to the tools. I can tell you which would have helped me, honestly. The safety net of the 3 to 6 months. Ever since I started doing that, it really has taken a huge weight off of my shoulders. And to be honest with you, I never knew the rules about how you were supposed to do that. So that was really interesting to hear you talk about like what you like. Really, just it's not this huge financial number that you need. It's really just the basics of how to get through each month.
Yes.
Which is really good to know.
It is. When I lost my job, I did have that 3 to 6 months. I had 3 months of it. And fortunately, I was out for a month. But it made me feel a little bit better because, it's stressful enough to be out of a job and have to go through that period. And I've had clients who were highly compensated, making a lot of money, and things happen. And to a person, they were like, I'm glad you told me to have this, because at least I can go out and look for a job and not have to worry about, not paying my light bill or things like that.
Well, because then even if you have to get one of those sort of, temporary things, like either a gig job or something, at least it's some money coming in. But if you have some savings, it's not going to be, you're not going to be underwater financially as quickly as if you didn't have any of that emergency safety net.
Exactly.
It's just, when you think about it, it's really hard to do, but once you do it, I found it to be incredibly helpful.
It is. What I like to do is just make it automatic. That's the best thing I ever did for myself. I read this book years ago, and he talked about automating your savings. And I put my savings in a place where I can't see it every month, so I don't find, problems that look like the size of my savings account. And I send it off. It's just like a bill. That money goes in every month. And I keep it going in every month. And that just ensures that I know that there's a safety net if something were to happen.
That's clever. That's really clever.
Yeah, I put it out of sight, out of mind.
Even better, because with money, sometimes the minute I ever heard that expression, like, if you have a dime, you'll find a way to spend it, or something along those lines. Like, a lot of people out there like that, myself included sometimes. So
yeah, you go ahead. You have $1,000 in your bank account, you start seeing $1,000 problems, right?
Indeed.
Do this, I can do that, I can do that. You start finding ways to spend it. So I put it out of sight, out of mind. And as you think about the tools that we've talked about today, and if you just want to noodle with someone and talk through that, don't hesitate. Reach out. My contact information is here. You can reach out to me directly, or you can reach me on allknowwealth.com and schedule an appointment, and no obligation. Just come in and I will answer your questions and help you to make sure that you don't have to deal with the challenges I had to deal with.
Well, and as always, Lamont, thank you for some very straightforward, easy to follow advice for us people who are still trying to figure things out financially. So thank you so much, as always.
Oh, you're welcome, Aaron. And I look forward to hearing from everyone.
All right, sounds good. All right, and if you guys like he said, have any questions, please check out their website or reach out to Lamont directly. I can verify he's extremely easy to work with. All right, have a good rest of your day, everyone.